A brand new weapon has been added to Minecraft 1.21. But where did it come from? Why does it exist? And who created it? Well, let's find out in the story of the Mace. And so it was a warm spring morning, and a brave adventurer was riding on his horse, traversing the land, when all of a sudden... What was that? And so intrigued, he set off in the direction of that blast, galloping across the land as fast as his horse could take him, and in just a short few hours, he believed he had found the source of it all. As everything was on fire here, it was a path of destruction, and the very air just felt... odd. Something had clearly happened here, so the brave adventurer followed the trail of destruction until he saw it. A giant meteor. But all over said meteor were illagers casting dark magical spells. He was scared. He knew that he couldn't fight all of them, but still, he wanted to get a better view of this celestial object, and so wielding his sword for safety, he commanded his horse onwards. The illagers heard this, and so they all turned to face him. Oh no, this can't be good. But before the adventurer could even comprehend the peril before him, all the illagers just ran away. That was odd. But still, the area was clear now, and so he had his opportunity to explore this strange object before him. And rather quickly, during his investigation of it, he uncovered what the illagers were casting their spells on. It was this large metallic black block. He had never seen anything like this before, and so he leapt off his horse and took a few steps closer. It was not of this world, and so he wanted it. As really, how many villagers could say that they had something that wasn't from the overworld? And so he retrieved his pickaxe and began to mine this strange dark metal. Now this metallic object proved to be very tough, as his enchanted diamond pickaxe was having trouble breaking it. But still, he persevered, and after a short while, the block finally broke. The adventurer picked it up, and well, it was heavy. Very heavy. In fact, he could barely even hold it. But before he could get a closer examination of this heavy metal, he heard it. Oh no, they were returning. The adventurer knew that he would be unable to take all of them, and so with just that one strange metallic block, he leapt back onto his horse and galloped away. Now, over the next few days, he travelled the lands, trying to find his next great adventure. And well, he was about to, as on one dark rainy night, just a few weeks later, the adventurer saw a horde of zombies chasing after him, and so he ordered his horse to venture deeper into the pine forest, at speed so fast that he couldn't even see where he was going. And well, that proved to be a foolish decision, as his horse, disoriented and going too quick to stop, fell into a ravine. Now luckily, the adventurer was safe, as he had his horse to cushion his fall. But as for the horse itself, well, it wasn't doing so well. The sheer drop had done some serious damage to him, and thus he was no longer able to carry the villager. In fact, he could barely even walk. Now this wasn't great, but at least his horse was still alive, and so the adventurer tied his horse to a small post, fed him some sugar, and just allowed the steed to rest alone. He needed to regenerate, and that was going to take quite some time. And so while his companion was healing, the adventurer decided to do some exploring. He was at the bottom of a ravine at the end of the day, and thus he began to descend into the darkness. That ravine led into a giant cave network, and so that allowed the adventurer to explore for many hours, and to descend much deeper into the world than what he was used to. But while he was down there, in that cave network, he saw this strange glow in the distance. Now this glow was not from lava, nor was it from a glow lichen. No, it was from a light source that he had never seen before. And so curious, he went to investigate it. And well, once he reached it, he was at a loss for words. He had just discovered a trial chamber He had never seen anything like this before, and so mesmerized by the sight before him, he entered that chamber, and he began to explore. The architecture of this place was just astounding. It seemed so ancient, and yet so modern. It was a fusion of copper blocks and tough bricks, and there were these mystical redstone copper bulbs that lit it all up. It was amazing. Whoever, or whatever built this, was clearly very skilled. But still, he continued to venture forth, intrigued at what else this chamber had to offer, and rather quickly, he found a door. Cautiously, he opened it, and he entered into a secondary corridor. There was a set of stairs on the opposite side, and so he followed the path and ascended those stairs. And it was then that he entered a giant room. Taking a moment to look more closely, this room looked like a battleground, and he found these strange spawners that dotted the room. The adventurer took a couple steps towards those spawners, intrigued by their differing design, but before he could reach them, he heard an odd mechanical sound, and then hordes of mobs began to rise from the dead. Now, he knew what most of them were, as there were strays, and skeletons, and zombies, but there were also these flying, well, he didn't quite know how to describe them. Monsters, maybe? Well, they were called the Breeze, and for a moment, there was calm. Everyone was at peace. But then, just a few seconds later, the tranquility was shattered as the battle had begun. The adventurer took to the challenge, drawing his sword and fighting off these adversaries. Now, he was able to kill all the zombies quite quickly. The skeletons were a bit more difficult, and the strays, well, they took even longer, but he was able to defeat them all. But as for those breeze creatures, well, they were almost impossible to kill. They did so much knockback, and were always flying across the room. After a lengthy battle, he killed one, but that didn't matter. The other one was still alive, and continuing to fight back with all its might. The adventurer was about to die. The breeze was too much for him to handle, but then, in one final strike, before he was about to give up, he hit the breeze, and it was defeated. However, as it died, it dropped this strange rod, so the adventurer, confused with what he was seeing, walked over and picked it up. It was a breeze rod. Now, it felt very light and airy, yet also oddly durable. It felt like something one would use in a weapon. It was shaped like a stick, so perhaps it could be used as an alternative. But that was just a dumb thought to have. It was a fun idea, but there was no way that anyone would ever do that. Plus, he didn't even have the appropriate resources to test if that would even work. So really, in his mind, that would just have to be a fun experiment for the future, once he was out of this chamber, unless he stored the breeze rod in his inventory and returned to the main corridor of that chamber, ready to continue his exploration of this mystical place. And he was just looking around, admiring the room, when, wait a second, he did have something that he could use to make a weapon with that breeze rod. He had that strange black metallic block. He could use that, and so he retrieved it from his inventory and attached it to the top of the breeze rod and attempted to make an axe of sorts, but it was far too heavy, and so the villager dropped it almost immediately after letting go of the top part. The block detached from the breeze rod and they collapsed to the floor, and so the adventurer got out his pickaxe and began to mine that strange metal, fully expecting that breeze rod to be crushed under the weight of such a block. However, once he'd collected that metal, he saw it. The breeze rod was there, undamaged. It was surprisingly durable enough to withstand that crushing force. That was fascinating. Any regular stick would have been annihilated by that, so maybe this breeze rod was actually a good alternative to a stick. Just, perhaps, he shouldn't be using such a large metallic block as the head, as it was just far too heavy for him to wield. But what if he shrunk that block down and used a smaller version of it and attached that to the breeze rod? Would that work? Surely it should. Now very luckily, that adventurer had some experience in smelting down massive blocks of metal, and so he knew what he needed to do, and thus he quickly made a makeshift furnace using the tough bricks from the walls of this chamber, and then he placed a skeleton skull that was just lying around as his mould, and then he placed down some lava above, and then he threw that black block of metal over the lava, and just for some good luck, he also pressed that subscribe button. Quickly, the black metal melted into a liquid, and so it was then that he poured it around the skull, and even into that skull, to create a head-sized shape of that strange metal, and then to cool it all down, he poured some water over it. Now, when he went to retrieve his creation, he found that the core left over had lost most of its colour. This was likely due to the tough bricks partially fusing into that core, as well as the fast cooling causing a desaturating effect upon the metal. Also, due to that fast cooling, a strange pattern formed in that core, similar to that of the basalt. But he was okay with both those facts. These were just the aesthetics, and that wasn't too important, as its functionality, well, that was retained, and that was all that mattered to him. And so successfully, he had just created the heavy core. And so he fused his heavy core with the breeze rod and created a brand new weapon. Now, it wasn't an axe, as the head was too big and too even to be classified as an axe. So really, this was more of a mace. Now, the powers and the utility of this mace were yet to be known by the villager, and so wielding this new mace, he ventured into another room and activated the strange spawners, as he was intending to learn everything he possibly could about the mace in a practical environment. And well, he quickly learnt that the mace dealt a lot of damage, the same as a diamond sword in fact. Also, it was so light and airy and quick to use, likely due to the properties of that breeze rod, and it dealt a lot of knockback. That was likely due to the pure might and weight of the heavy core. Both of these factors worked rather well together, particularly when he leapt from the platforms above and struck the creatures below, as an attack like that with the mace did enough knockback to rival even that of the breeze. So this mace was not just a fun weapon to play with, but was also rather effective at combat. And so for the next few weeks, the adventurer played around with that mace, exploring all the rooms within that trial chamber, and using the mace as his primary weapon in every battle. Also, due to the great power of the mace, that adventurer became rather fascinated with the breeze, which was a key ingredient in creating the mace. Also, because the breeze were just very fascinating creatures that he wanted to learn more about. And so over time, the adventurer used the mace to mark patterns inspired by those mystical breeze onto some of the pots within that chamber. The breeze were amazing creatures, and the mace was a great weapon. In fact, it was more than that. It was his favourite weapon, and he was determined to never again use anything but the mace. However, that simple idea would be forced to change very soon, as one day, while he was just strolling through the chamber, mace in hand, ready for the next battle, he heard a demonic voice call out for him.
Drop the mace and never return to the chambers.
The adventurer was scared. Who was that? No, it didn't matter. That was some sort of demon, and he was far too fearful to not follow its instructions. And so he did as he was told. He immediately threw down the mace, and he left the chamber in a hurry, planning never to return. Now, over the next few hours, that mace broke down into its key components: the heavy core and the breeze rod. Now the heavy core was pulled by some sort of magnetic force into one of the vaults, and the breeze rod, well, it just floated away. So, was that it? Was that the end of the mace? Well, no. As due to the great curse of the chambers, a change in one affects all others. So, that heavy core, well, it was now in vaults all across the world, in all different chambers. And those breeze pots, the ones that villager had made using the mace, well, they were also in all chambers across the world. So now, if anyone opened a vault, there was a chance that a new heavy core could be released, and thus, many new maces could be created. Well, in theory. Now as for that villager, well, he returned to his healed horse, and he continued to travel across the world. Soon he would even meet up with other adventurers. He would tell his stories about the trial chambers and that magical mace. Now, these other adventurers would always think that he was lying. It just sounded insane that he, a regular villager, could go on to create a brand new weapon, such as the mace. It was clearly a tale of lies. But still, the adventurer continued to speak about his life and travel the world, looking out for their next little quest. But little did he know, his greatest adventure was yet to unfold, as he, along with his group, would venture onwards and uncover a monster unlike anything that this world had ever seen. But to learn what happened next, you'll need to watch this video.